They came from forgotten places, from villages without stadiums, from streets where football was survival, not a game. They came with nothing, and still Europe closed the door, ignored, overlooked, disrespected. But they kept pushing, kept dreaming, and finally, they couldn't be ignored any longer. This is the story of three African footballers. Europe tried to forget them, but they made sure the world would remember their name. If you love football stories that were buried or erased, hit that subscribe button, because here we bring the truth behind the boots. Michael Essien. The bison Europe didn't want to feed before he became Chelsea's engine. Before he wore the blue and conquered Europe, Michael Essien was just a kid trying to get noticed. But the problem? Europe wasn't watching. Essien's journey started in the small suburb of Awutu-Breku in Ghana. His father worked as a laborer and money was tight. Still, there was one thing Michael had in abundance: power. They called him the Bison, not just because of his strength, but his relentless hunger. At just 17, he played in the FIFA U17 World Cup for Ghana. He dominated. Scouts noticed, but offers? None. Why? He wasn't flashy, he wasn't from a big academy, and most of all, he was African eventually, a small French club. Bastia took a chance, but even then, European pundits labeled him too physical, undisciplined, limited. They didn't see the genius in his defensive timing. They didn't understand the IQ it took to control a midfield without making the headlines. They didn't care because he wasn't European. But when Essien moved to Lyon, that changed. He didn't just play, he dominated League One. Two-time league champion, player of the year. Still, no Ballon d'Or nominations, no magazine covers. Even at Chelsea, where he helped Mourinho build one of the toughest teams in Premier League history, Essien was always the unsung hero. Didier Drogba got the headlines. Lampard got the goals. Essien got the bruises. And he didn't complain once. Those weren't just goals, they were statements. Essien was the engine, the piece Chelsea couldn't function without. When he was fit, Chelsea loan spells, forgotten. But ask any Chelsea fan today, they'll tell you, Essien was one of the best midfielders the Premier League has ever seen. Not just African, one of the best, period. He never won the Ballon d'Or, never got the global superstardom. But maybe that was never the point. Essien didn't play for headlines. He played for Ghana. He played for pride. He played so that the next generation wouldn't have to fight just to be seen. This is what Europe tried to ignore. A warrior, a leader, a bison with a heart bigger than any trophy. John Obi Mikel. The midfield ghost they couldn't replace in a world chasing flair and flash. He chose silence. He chose simplicity. And they hated him for it. But John Obi Mikel didn't need the spotlight. He was the system. From the moment he stepped into football, Mikel was different. Born in Jos, Nigeria, he showed maturity far beyond his years. While other kids chased goals, Mikel mastered control. He could see passes before they happened, read the game like a book, and write the ending himself. But when Europe came calling, even that wasn't straightforward. In 2005, the biggest transfer saga in Nigerian history unfolded. Mikel, just 18, was signed by Manchester United and Chelsea at the same time. Two of the biggest clubs in the world were fighting over a teenage Nigerian. But do you know what the media said? Why all this drama for a defensive midfielder from Africa? That's how little they understood him. Chelsea paid a record fee to settle the dispute, $16 million. Mikel was labeled the next big thing. But instead of attacking brilliance, he gave them something else. Balance. He became the unsung glue in Mourinho's midfield. Did the dirty work so Lampard could shine. Broke counterattacks so Drogba could win finals. Still, critics asked, what does Mikel even do? They didn't understand and didn't want to, because Mikel didn't score screamers, didn't dance after goals, didn't argue with referees. He made football simple. And in Europe, simplicity is underrated when it comes from Africa. Year after year, Mikel racked up minutes, played Champions League, won Premier League titles, anchored the midfield against Messi, Xavi, and Iniesta, and won. Yet, He was never nominated for African Footballer of the Year. Not once. Even after winning the Champions League in 2012, with a near-perfect performance in the final, no individual glory came. But the truth? Chelsea don't win that final without him. Go back and watch that game. Barcelona in the semis, Bayern in the final. When chaos reigned, Mikel stood calm, like a wall. The fans knew, his teammates knew, but Europe still blind. Then came the moment of true national pride. Mikel led Nigeria to AFCON glory. He didn't just defend, he led. And yet, when lists of African greats are drawn up, he's missing. Why? Because he didn't chase headlines. Because he didn't fit the stereotype of the flamboyant African midfielder. Because he was too good at being simple. Mikel never raised his voice, but he raised trophies. Premier League, FA Cup, Europa League, Champions League. Over two. Seydou Keita, the backbone of Barcelona's empire. We remember the magic of Messi, the genius of Xavi, the poetry of Iniesta. In Bamako, Mali, Seydou Keita was raised in a footballing family. His uncle was Salif Keita, one of Africa's early exports to Europe. From a young age, Seydou knew the road to Europe was brutal, not paved with lights and offers, but with sacrifice, silence, and skepticism. He moved to France as a teenager, joining Marseille, then Lorient, then Lens. There he matured, became a box-to-box machine, captain, leader, role model. In 2007, Keita signed for Sevilla, the gateway club for unsung African greats. He impressed in La Liga, controlled tempo, outran entire midfields. And then came the call. Pep Guardiola wanted him for his new Barcelona project. And just like that, the soft-spoken kid from Bamako walked into the biggest midfield in world football. At Barcelona, Keita wasn't a star, but he was the engine no one noticed. He rotated with Busquets, Iniesta, Pedro. He could defend, press, attack. He sacrificed himself so others could shine, and he did it all without ego. But Europe didn't celebrate Keita. They said, he's just a squad player. He won 3 La Liga titles, 2 Champions League trophies, 2 Club World Cups, more decorated than most European legends, but barely mentioned in conversations about greatness. Because he was African, because he didn't fit the flashy, goal-scoring narrative, because he wasn't loud. And yet, when he returned to Mali for international duty, he was a god. He captained the national team, played with pride, helped Mali finish 3rd at AFCON 2012. Despite civil unrest tearing his country apart, he wasn't just a footballer, he was a symbol of strength for a broken nation. After Barcelona, he could have retired rich and quiet. But no, Keita kept playing. He joined Dalian Erbin in China, then AS Roma, still running, still tackling, still ignored. But ask any everything football forgets to praise. He didn't need billboards. He didn't need awards, because he had respect, the rarest trophy of all. Seydou Keita. Europe tried to ignore him, but his name lives forever in the blueprint of Barcelona. He taught us that simply shows up and does the work. Europe tried to ignore them. They doubted them. They overlooked their greatness. But these 3 African footballers didn't just survive. They changed the game. If you've been inspired by these untold stories, if you believe African football deserves more respect, then join us here at Behind the Boots. Hit that subscribe button now, like this video, and share it with everyone who loves the beautiful game, because these stories need to be told. Don't forget, we have plenty more deep dives, hidden legends, and scandalous football tales coming your way. So stay tuned, stay passionate, and keep loving football the way it deserves. Thank you for watching, and welcome to the real story behind the boots.